I was walking through Dublin city about the hour of 12 at night. It was there I saw a fair pretty female washing her feet by Cannon.
Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to Poetry Ireland and our first ever event for the Frank Harte Festival. I'm Catherine Ann Cullen, I'm poet in residence here, and I'm absolutely delighted to be bringing my beloved ballad tradition and the Frank Harte tradition into this building. The Frank Harte Festival is run by the An Góilín Traditional Singing Club, and both are based across the square from us here in Parnell Square. Poetry and song are near neighbours too. Frank Harte was a Dublin singer and song collector, a walking archive of songs that he loved to share. He called songs the poetry of the people, but he also loved poetry for itself. The poem he quoted most often gave its name to this event, Living Ghosts. It's a poem by the beloved writer Brendan Kennelly. And the lines that Frank loved best were, "All the songs are living ghosts and long for a living voice." And what a wonderful selection of living voices we have for you today. We've songs that come from poems and from poets. We've a new song and a new poem getting their first hearing, and we have a stellar lineup of writers and performers, from Theo Dorgan and Moya Cannon to Maeve and Trina Nigonal, Niamh Parsons, Derry O'Farrell, and many more. We hoped to have them all here with us in Poetry Ireland, but due to the latest COVID restrictions, we have them instead in their kitchens, living rooms and parlours, and thanks to all of them for the extra effort it took to record themselves there. Thanks also to all at Poetry Ireland, especially our new director Niamh O'Donnell, for facilitating us, to the Frank Harte Festival Committee for partnering with us, and the Irish Traditional Music Archive. We've an embarrassment of riches, so let's dive straight in. Here's a former director of Poetry Ireland, a poet, non-fiction writer, novelist, editor, and many more accomplishments to his name. His latest books are Orpheus from Daedalus Press and a translation of Lorca's Romancero Gitano into Irish, published by Cushcame in 2019. He's a member of Aesdona, and he is, of course, Theo Dorgan.
We loved Frank and we continue to honour him for his almost uncanny ability to find his way into the heart of a song, to find a new way into the truth of a song. But we should rightly honour him also for the enormous selfless work he did for the memory of the people, storing the songs, recording the songs, putting the songs where we can always reach them. We live in evanescent times and things come and go and we can lose things very quickly. But think of the thousands and thousands of songs that we will never lose because Frank kept them. In that sense, he made it possible for us to approach the ghosts of the songs and find what is living in them. And when we find what's living in a song, I think we touch something, the most important thing, that is living in ourselves. Another man who knew the power of song is that great man, Brendan Kennelly. I say a great man as an ecumenical gesture because he is, after all, from Kerry, but we have to let that go by. It is Brendan's poem, Living Ghosts. Richard Broderick celebrates this winter's first and only fall of snow with a midnight rendering of the bonny bunch of roses, oh. And Paddy Dineen is rising with on top of the old stone wall. His closed eyes respect the song, his mind's a festival. And now Ramona lights the lips of swaying Davy Shea. In a world of possibilities, this is the only way. His face a summer morning when the sun decides to smile. Tom Keane touches enchantment with charming Carrigail. I've seen men in their innocence, untroubled by right or wrong. I close my eyes and see them becoming song. All the songs are living ghosts and long for a living voice. Oh, may another fall of snow bid Broderick rejoice. Frank's ability to find what's in the heart of the song could have unexpected consequences. You could find yourself in the time of a session and in another time entirely lifted by whatever it was he found and brought out in a song. And this happened to me in Kilmainham Jail in Easter 1991, when a whole bunch of renegades and reprobates and poets and actors and singers and musicians decided that the state's fear of our own history was simply unacceptable. They had decided not to mark the 75th anniversary of the Easter Rising. And so we organised a concert in Kilmainham Jail. And it was a most peculiar occasion. The OPW had given permission for 400 or so people, and we counted them in. And when we'd reached the limit, we closed the doors because we were giving them no excuse to close us down. And the last two comrades from the out on a freebie from the then Soviet Ministry of Culture had landed into Dublin and were being passed around, and they'd been landed into my hands as Director of Poetry Ireland at the time. And so I found myself at 10 minutes to 8 on a Sunday night explaining to these baffled comrades that yes, it is perfectly normal in Ireland for there to be a riot outside a prison of people trying to get in. Because of course, you see, we've advertised an 8 o'clock start, and we all know what that means in Ireland. Anyway, we'd somehow managed to borrow a tricolour and the starry plough that had flown over Dublin on Easter Monday. And they were hanging over the stage. And you have to imagine that panopticon that is Kilmainham, the rows of caged walkways, and the stage underneath them, and you can hear you can feel the atmosphere. And there was a broken pane of glass somewhere, so there was an intermittent howling that came and went, that came and went. And Frank stood up to sing. And what he stood up to sing was Paddy Galvin's great lament for James Connolly. And this is what happened. Kilmainham Jail, Dublin, Easter 1991. Roadies in ponytails stringing lights and cables. A beer can popped in the corner, echo of sound check. Outside in the filling yard, hum of expectation. We pour through the narrow gate under the gallows hook in 2s and 3s, becoming an audience. Before the lights go down, we examine each other shyly. The singer surveys his audience, heat rising to the tricolour and plough overhead as the first words of Galvin's lament climb to invoke James Connolly's ghost. We are joined by the dead. I say this as calmly as I can. The gaunt dead crowded the catwalks, shirt-sleeved, disbelieving. The guards had long since vanished, but these looked down on us, their faces pale. I saw men there who had never made their peace, men who had failed these many years to accept their fate, still stunned by gunfire, wounds, fear for their families, paralysed until now by the long volleys of May so long ago. I think that we all felt it, their doubt and their new fear, the emblems so familiar, the setting, our upturned faces so unreal. Only the dignity of the singer's art had power to release them. I felt it. I say this calmly. I saw them leave in 2s and 3s as the song ended. I do not know that there is a heaven, but I saw their souls fan upward like leaves from a dry book, sped out into the night by volleys of applause, sped out, I hope, into some light at last. I do not know that I will ever be the same again. That soft-footed gathering of the dead into their peace was like something out of a book. In Kilmainham Jail, I saw this. I felt this. I say this as calmly and lovingly as I can. Frank was a great carrier of songs, and we honour the carriers of songs because the songs matter. They come down to us, we sing them variously in our different voices with our different kinds of understanding, and then we pass on, but the song goes on. So it's a noble and an ancient thing to be a carrier of song. Frank, as we know, was a supreme carrier of songs. But not long ago, We lost another great carrier when we lost Leonard Cohen. And I wrote a song for Leonard, who himself knew that he was but a moment in a great and unbroken and necessary tradition. The troubadour's departure. When the long pale riders come down from the hills, down from the edge of the forest on their tall horses, coming easy and slow with all the time in the world, relaxed and looking about them as they always do. A cold wind will come on ahead of them, bending the heavy grasses up through the valley. This is what happens the day they come for a singer. Always a wind when they come for one of their own. The old people say the singers are always at home the day the pale riders come steadily up through the valley, relaxed and looking about them as they always do. The fair huntress, the three dark brothers. When they come for a singer, they're coming to bring him home. That's what they say, the old people who know. Leonard has lately been singing us songs of the road. This is what happens before they come down from the hills. The women will bear their breasts down in the harvest. The men will come in from the hunt, solemn and silent. The children too will be silent, gathering to the singer, and the oldest woman among us will sing the farewell. The tall huntress will lead up the strong black horse, the saddle crested with silver, stars and a moon. This is what happens the day they come for a singer. They lead up a riderless horse to bring him away. Gracias, Senora. Gracias for the loan of Leonard. Let him speak kindly of us when he goes home. Gracias, Senora. Gracias for the gift of Leonard. Let him speak kindly of us when he comes home.
Thanks to Theo Dorgan for those rich poems and his living memories of Frank Harte. Theo's poem about Frank singing in Kilmainham Jail captures the eerie atmosphere of that night back in 1991. The song Frank sang then was one written by the poet Patrick Galvin. We're going to hear it now from Jerry O'Reilly. Jerry is a founder member of the An Góilín Singing Club and the Frank Harte Festival, and as well as keeping the legacy of Frank Harte alive, he is a living legacy himself, and long may he thrive. He's going to sing us two songs, and I'll let him introduce them in his own authentic style.
So this song is a song called James Connolly, written by the great Patrick Galvin. Frank, as we all know, was an unreconstructed Irish Republican, and his Republican ideals were very, very strong. And he believed that songs like this were so important because they told the history of Irish people, of the people's history rather than the historian's history. We spent lots of time together, and one of my last memories of Frank, of course, is going on the 6th of May in 2005 to the Phoenix Park, to the spot where the Phoenix Park incident took place. Frank would never call it the Phoenix Park murders. He did not consider them murders, he considered them a political assassination. Anyway, this is Patrick Galvin's great song, James Connolly. Oh where is our James Connolly? Oh where can that brave man be? He is gone to organise the unions, that working men might yet be free. And where, oh where is the citizen army? And where, oh where is that gallant band? They have gone to join the great rebellion for the freedom of each working man. And who'll be there to lead the van? and who'll be there to lead the van? Who but our own James Connolly, the hero of each working man, who carries high the burning flag, who carries high the burning flag. Who but James Connolly, all pale and wounded, who carries high the burning flag. So they've carried him up to the jail. They've carried him to Kilmainham Jail, and there they've shot him on a fine May morning, and quickly laid him in a quicklime grave. Who mourns now for our James Connolly? Who mourns now for that gallant man? Oh, lay me down in yon green garden, but make my bearers Union men. So they've laid him down in yon green garden, with Union men on every side, and they swore they would form a mighty union and fill this gallant man with pride. So come all of you young Irish people, come join with me for liberty, and we'll forge a mighty weapon, and we'll break the bonds of slavery. My second song is a song called The Saltless Chapel, and it was written by Pat Burke in the immediate aftermath of Frank's death in 2005. Pat very cleverly weaves the names of lots of songs and Frank's great sort of interest in Irish history and in Napoleon Bonaparte, as well as lamenting the fact that he had been a huge influence on a lot of the younger singers who came along in later years. So this is The Saltless Chapel by Pat Burke. Near to a Saltless Chapel where the river Liffey flows, a blackbird perched upon a tree calls out to friends and foes. To the east and west I've flown, north and south also. I seek a gallant man of song, pray tell me where to go. I've searched Dublin city fair, from daybreak to candle end. My wings are tired, my voice is hoarse, I fear I've lost a friend. Alongside the river's edge, by a weeping willow tree, a summer breeze calls out in vain, where, oh, where can he be? I was but a youth myself, when first your voice I heard. The old songs captivated me, my soul at once ensnared. You made us laugh, made us sigh, your keys opened the door unto the vaults of history and the treasures of folklore. To hear how Larry's neck was stretched upon the gallows tree, of the ragman and the ball they held in Dublin's liberties, how Johnny Doyle on the high seas forgot his lover's fate, while the Spanish lady broke the heart of a young man rambling late. To hear the songs of 98 from the ashes once more rise, like a phoenix resurrected, whose spirit never dies. With Napoleon Bonaparte you wove a tapestry, through Paris, London, Waterloo, to St. Helena's Quay. In truth you were a patriot, you loved the Shamrock shore. Your heart and soul in Ireland's cause, that her rights be restored. Wars and famine we endured, indignities and wrongs. Those in power write the history, those who suffer write the songs. The blackbird once again called out a sad and plaintive cry, as mourners we assembled in the chapel yard close by. We'll never see your like again, or hear you called upon. We'll miss you at these gatherings, where all the singers throng. As dusk it fell on that Friday eve, the news had far spread. Across continents the tributes came for a darling man now dead. Oh where have you gone to? Chapel Lizard's favourite son. The boatman waits to ferry you to the eternal land of song. Frank Harte.
Thanks to Jerry O'Reilly for those stirring renditions of James Connolly by Patrick Galvin and Isolde's Chapel by Pat Burke. Next, I'm delighted to welcome three women I greatly admire. Poet Moya Cannon, followed by two of Ireland's most respected traditional singers and musicians, Mairead and Trinal Ní Dhomhnaill. I think you'll agree they're absolutely central to the song tradition here. Moya Cannon has published 6 collections, most recently Donegal Tarantella, published last year by Carcanet Press. Music has been central to many of her poems, which is hardly surprising since she hails from the music heartland of Dunfanaghy in County Donegal. Moya has been honoured with many awards, has been editor of Poetry Ireland Review and is a member of Ace Dóna. She'll be reading 2 of her own Frank Harte and music-related poems, and then she'll introduce the Ní Dhomhnaills, who will be presenting the world premiere of a song written by Moya about a tragedy off Westport.
Hello. I just want to say what an absolute pleasure and honour it is to participate in this Frank Harte Festival. I have very, very vivid memories of Frank Harte. When I was a student and subsequently when I lived in Dublin in the late 70s and 80s, I was often put along to singing sessions by my brother Paul, who used to sing a song occasionally. And if Frank Harte was at a session, it was a great event. And I remember his extraordinary collection of songs and his distinctive gravelly voice and his warm presence and big woolly jumpers as well. I remember those two. But so I'm delighted to be here today. He was really one of the great carriers of tradition. One of those people who I believe he used to talk about. He loved to collect songs from our lads and our ones. And this poem is called Carrying the Songs. It is an epigraph from Frank Harte. It's dedicated to Trina and Mairead Ní Dhomhnaill. And it is an epigraph from Frank Harte where he says, "Those in power write the history, those who suffer write the songs." In fact, I think songs they're kind of an emotional history, aren't they? Okay, Carrying the Songs. Oh yeah, I should explain, there are 2 sources for this poem. One is the work of a wonderful short story writer called Alistair MacLeod, who's Canadian. He wrote a story called The Tuning of Perfection about singing in Canada. And in it I came across mention of a little song which I had learnt as a child in Donegal, which travelled over and back to Scotland and then over to Nova Scotia. And I wondered after reading, I said, why is it always the poorer people who carry the songs with them, the poorest people? I said maybe they need the shelter off them in their new homeland. And I was thinking afterwards, actually, in terms of Frank Harte. Apparently, one of the things which really inspired him to collect was hearing, as a young man, hearing a traveller singing in Ballisodare and selling ballad sheets. But the other thing that inspired the song was when Myra mentioned that her brother Micha had gone up to Donegal at one stage to collect songs from their aunt Nellie, whom I remember. She was blind and she was a great knitter, and he thought he'd get a handful of songs from her, and came back with over 100. And then Trina subsequently went up and asked her had she any songs in English, and came back with such treasures as When I Was a Fair Maid and Do You Love an Apple, Do You Love a Pear. So this is for the great carriers of the songs. It was always those with little else to carry who carried the songs, to Babylon, to the Mississippi. Some of these last possessed less than nothing, did not own their own bodies. Yet, 3 centuries later, deep rhythms from Africa, stowed in their hearts, their bones, carry the world's songs. And for those who left my county, girls from Downings and the Rosses, who followed herring boats north to Shetland, gutting the sea's silver as they went, or boys from Ranafast or Hornhead who took the Derry boat, who slept over a rope in a bothy. Songs were their soul's currency, the pure metal of their hearts, to be exchanged for other gold, other songs, which rang out true and bright when flung down upon the deal boards of their days. Our writer-in-residence, Catherine Ann Cullen, writer-in-residence in Poetry Ireland, when she approached me about this, she said, have you any other poems about songs? And I said, I have plenty. I can't sing, but I love songs, so I've written quite a bit about them. So I chose this one, which is called The Song of the Books. And Oran na Leor, being a bit disloyal here, this is one of the great Munster songs. I heard the tune played first by Tomás Cannon of the Philly in Trinity College again when I was a student. But there are many recordings of it, including a wonderful one by Siobhan Hart. So it's about the theme of the song. The poet schoolmaster Thomas Maeve O'Sullivan was moving from Derrynane in the south of the Iveragh Peninsula up to Portmagee in the north. We don't know why. I don't know whether it was some alleged misdemeanour or injustice, but anyway, he travelled overland and he sent his books by sea, and by some terrible misfortune the boat went down and he lost all of his books. And apparently, as a keeper of the flame, he had been entrusted with a lot of valuable manuscripts and books. So he wrote this searing lament with an incredible air, and called Oran na Leor. So this little poem is dedicated to Seamus and Brona. The Song of the Books. It's the plummeting second note that knells his despair 2 centuries later. His clothes and all his leather-bound books drifted down among the kelp off Derrynane. His own poems, his rare manuscripts in Irish, blurring underwater, turning to pulp amongst crabs and mackerel. And the poet schoolmaster who had travelled overland, getting word by the shore in Portmagee, and making a song out of utter loss. It was not the library of Alexandria, whose shelved scrolls stored the known world's wisdom and claimed to cure souls, nor the library of Nineveh or of Babylon, where kings had imprinted their triumphs on wet clay. Yet the bell-voiced singers and the uilleann pipers tell it, as though the wooden sailing boat, with its small treasured library, the identity papers of the dispossessed, had hit that sea-hid rock, had gone down only yesterday. And now for something quite different, as they say. I was in Achill a couple of years ago, staying at the Heinrich Böll cottage, and went for a walk one day, and I went into the little graveyard and churchyard of Niamh Bardon. It's in Davenant in the south of the island. And there I came across this graveyard, which I assumed was a landlord's grave because it had an iron railing around it. But then I realised it wasn't. It was the grave of those who had been drowned in the terrible Clúibé disaster of 1894. I'd heard of this before in a radio documentary, RTÉ radio documentary called Two Trains to Achill. Apparently, a group of tatty hookers, 400, were heading off to Scotland for the harvest. Most of them young, and they neared Westport, and they apparently there were quite a number of young girls on board, and it was their first time going off, and they got very excited when they saw the steamer, and they crowded to one side of the boat, and then just by the wind sort of caught the sail just at that point, a gust of wind, it jibed, the boat capsized, and 32 were drowned, most of them young girls. And when I was reading their names, I was so moved. They were sort of like the names of girls I went to school with. There were so many Marys and so many Bridgets and Kates. And I just thought of the incredible shock that the island must have suffered. They were brought back on the train, the first train to Achill. The track had already been laid, but they opened it especially to bring them back. I wanted to write an elegy for them. And when I did, it somehow came out a bit like a song. So I approached Maeve and O'Sullivan and asked if they would perhaps try to put it to a tune. And they said they would. So I'm thrilled they're here today to sing it. I'm a huge admirer of their singing. I still have my very first album ever that I bought when I was 15, Scarabray, that great classic. So I'm delighted they're here now to sing a song which I called 8 Marys, 4 Bridgets, 3 Kates. And Grim Pipe Gomor, this hour long.
400 left Achill that morning, 32 would come home on the train. Torn shawls on the keystones of the Westport, some never saw Achill again. In Scotland to earn the background, Taddy Hopper's the name they know. Here there were Mary and Bridget, Patsy, Kate, Honor and Joe. At Cockmore on June the 14th, 4 hookers lay out from the quay. The cutouts were rowed out to meet them, and the Victory headed away. The steamer they sighted near Westport, girls crowded all up to one side, singing and laughing and waving, but the wind changed and the boat, it capsized. Young Tom Dorgan, Edward O'Malley, saw it happen and rowed to the raid. On the quayside in Westport they laid them, 8 Marys, 4 Bridgets, 3 Kates. 2 days later the iron track was opened. On the first train those coffins came home. The borings were black nearing Achill, with people who walked there to mourn. An old man was drowned and a small girl, Mary Duggan, the blind fiddler's wife. From the valley the 3 Mullally sisters, each one in the flower of young life. A blight worse than anyone dreamed of struck the Coonies from Bangor's Hill. They lost Nancy and Joseph and Martin, and Curran with weeping was filled. Poverty forced them to leave home, and greed causes poverty still. Poor people still put out in small boats, and young bodies washing on the tide. As I was walking through Dublin city, about the hour of 12 at night, it was there I saw a fair pretty female washing her feet by candlelight. At first she washed them, then she dried them over a fire of amber coals. And in all my life I never did see a maid so neat about the soles. She had 20, 18, 16, 14, 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, 9. She had 19, 17, 15, 13, 11, 9, 7, 5, 3, and 1. I stopped to look, but the watchman passed. Says he, young fella, now the night is late, and along with your home or I would wrestle you straight away to the bridewell gate. I got to look from the Spanish lady, hot as a fire of amber coals. And in all my life I never did see a maid so neat about the soles. She had 20, 18, 16, 14, 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, 9. She had 19, 17, 15, 13, 11, 9, 7, 5, 3, and 1. I have wandered north and I've wandered south, by Stony Batter and Patrick's Close, and up and around by the Gloucester Diamond, back by Napper Tandy's house. But old age has laid her hand upon me, cold as a fire of ashy coals, and gone is the lovely Spanish lady, neat and sweet about the soles. She had 20, 18, 16, 14, 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, 9. She had 19, 17, 15, 13, 11, 9, 7, 5, 3, and 1. As I went back through Dublin city, as the dawn of day was o'er, oh, whom should I spy but the Spanish lady I was weary and forsore. Oh, she had a heart so filled with love, and her love she longed to share. And in all my life I never did see a maid who had so much to spare. So round and around goes the wheel of fortune, where a dress now wearies me. Oh, fair young maids are so deceiving, sad experience teaches me. She had 20, 18, 16, 14, 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, 9. She had 19, 17, 15, 13, 11, 9, 7, 5, 3, and 1. Yeah.
Well, Míle buíochas to Maeve and Trina Nigono for the gorgeous singing on both of those songs. I love that version of The Spanish Lady with its tricky counting. We've another treat in store now, as an afternoon about passing on songs and stories wouldn't be complete without a mincer or a traveller. The the travelling community has been instrumental in preserving traditions in Ireland and elsewhere. People like John Riley gifted us many songs. But today it's the turn of a Minker traveller storyteller whose first book, and a beautiful book it is, has just been published by Skein Press. It's called Why the Moon Travels, and to read the title story, welcome, fáilte, and gráilte, I think is a proper shelter word, to An Góilín.
Thank you very much, Catherine. We are here today to celebrate the life and work of Frank Harte, who himself was a storyteller. He passed his views, insights and connections via the songs and lyrics that he spun so well. A process and journey that for him started after hearing a Traveller woman sing. He honoured that song to such a degree that it reverberated and resonated in him for the rest of his life. So it is with a real, genuine honour that I share this traditional tale in respect and reflection of his life, the one he lived, and the one that continues to live in his music and memory. The story itself is called Why the Moon Travels, or in traditional Gammon, An Alumi Ludus Mishler. My father used to stand in the hallway beneath the amber glow of the light, equally stepping between the bedroom of my brother and that of my sister. With a cup of tea in hand and maybe a cigarette, he would recount the old stories and lull us off to a deep sleep. He was gifted with these stories around the campfire in his youth, from old and young alike, who filled the evening with tales and songs of the ever-growing retellings. For many travellers, the gift of a story or song comes with the responsibility to retell or resing it, for untold stories and unsung songs pass into the forgotten. One of the reasons we tell this story is to remind us that travellers are part of the world, and the world is a part of travellers. When we don't see or hear ourselves somewhere, stories like this become important as an anchor to where and why we live. This is one of the traditional stories my father once told me at bedtime. It is shorter than most, and although bittersweet, it has always made me smile. In a time long ago, when the earth was young, and the moon was a disk set in the sky, silent and still, sometimes, in whispered rumours, it was said that the moon would visit. When it did, it would take the form of a beautiful lady. Charming and alluring, stern and strong, she was a light unto herself and was kind to those on earth. She guided many at night with the light that she had borrowed from the day, making sure that none would ever lose their way as they travelled near or far from home. It was told that once, during her time on earth, that she met and fell in love with him in care. Now he was short of stature, slender and wispy, while a single distinguishing physical feature that would stay in the minds of those that met him. Nevertheless, people's eyes still fell in warmth on him. While he was neither sun nor star, he had a secret glow expressed in unspoken words and graceful motions. One night, on his way back from town, where he had spent the day sweeping chimneys, he decided to cut through the field to get home more quickly. Although his steps were hurried, he found his sight captured by the moon. He held his lingering gaze, and sensing the great want in them, she descended from the sky, slowly changing from a sphere of light to the glowing outlines of a figure. Now he was petrified, and he turned to flee, but she soon started singing a low melody with the words that he did not quite understand, but he sensed them to be kind and welcoming. He turned back to her, and he saw her for who she was, not just the moon, but a beautiful one. She was lonely and lovely and fair, with skin like fresh snowflakes, and hair like the softest silk, light mixed with grey, like clouds passing through the twilight sky. Her eyes were pale blue, soft as fallen snow. She was draped in cloths, dark twilight blue with glints of speckled starlight, and backlit in soft copper tones. Their love was wild, warm and daring and darling enough to even charm the stars from the heavens. She wore him and swore him to a deep secrecy, although as mortal men, she said, they were not to have love affairs with those who were of eternity. For many years she visited Earth once a month, and she met with them in care in the silence and wonder of the night. They would meet by a young river, and whose sound of the trickling water echoed with the murmurs of their love. Days, months, years went by, but age chased the young Minkelly man slowly, for time is halted for mortal men in the prior presence of eternity. While those around him succumbed to the batterings of age, the Minker grew older at a far slower pace. He hurried through his days, eager for nightfall. He would choose a camp without the shelter of tall trees and wait for a night without clouds, longing for a glimpse of his beloved. He would sleep with the canvas of the loben open so he could gaze up at the sky or down at the moon's reflection on the river. In time, his want for her consumed him and ate up much of his joy. The once charismatic Minker grew boastful and full of pride. One night in the pub, surrounded by friends, he told them of the beautiful lady of the moon, that it was she that he had taken as a lover and companion. Of course, his friends did not believe him, so he decided he would show them. The next time the moon came to the river, the Minker hid his friends behind a holly bush, allowing them to catch the glimpse of her. Now the moon, although in her ageless wisdom always knew when eyes would set upon her, understood that he had lied and discovered his friends. She was so shocked and bereft at his betrayal that she returned back from her lover and his mortal embrace, and she went back to the sky and hid in the darkness of the great nothing. The heartbroken Minker called to the sky, but the moon, she would not answer. She loved him and knew that despite his wrong, loved her, but now that their passion was known, they could never be together. Since then, the moon no longer settled upon the heavens, but creeps out tentatively each night and searches the earth for someone to love her as much as she would love him. Each time she is disappointed and sorrowful, and she turns her face away, and returns to the rest and solace of the great nothing, until the sharpness of her grief is again blurred and blunted by the deep well of strength that lies within her, and again she turns to gaze hopefully upon the earth. Since that night, and all other nights since, the moon herself has travelled the sky. Long live the memory of Frank, and long journey your songs. Royalty.
Thanks to Minker, traveller, storyteller An Góilín for that spellbinding tale. Travellers feature at the very beginning of Frank Harte's journey into song. He was first bitten by the ballad bug when he heard a travelling man singing a song at a fair in Boyle, County Roscommon. Frank was 14 years old and he'd gone to the fair with his father Peter, a Sligo man. This is a new poem I wrote about that moment, and I've prefaced it with a quote from Yeats, a poet that Frank Harte loved. It's called Broadside. I read in my book of songs that I bought at the Sligo Fair, and that's from Yeats's The Fiddler of Dooney. At the fair in Boyle you were all ears, drinking the pungent air, half drowned in the stink and clamour, waves of sound rushing the shore of your 14 years. Card sharps slyly shuffling, calves wailing, the bargain king's oratory from the high junction, dirty stop-outs calling pints without compunction, peddlers of corduroy at the hospital railing. Over the whirlpool of spittle and hand-slapping, one voice flung you a lifeline. You caught hold of a hard traveller's song, were sold on the arc of his ballad, its mapping of suffering in small places. Through the throng you floated in his wake, heard how the oppressed raise at injustice a clenched fist of verse, tender their dead a winding sheet of song. You found your voice, raised it your whole life long. That first song that Frank Harte heard at the fair in Boyle was The Valley of Knockanure. It was written by Brian McMahon, the Kerry school teacher, and we're very honoured to have BBC Folk Award winner Derry O'Farrell here to sing it for us. He's also going to sing one of the most beautiful of the songs about Napoleon that Frank passed on to us, The Isle of St. Helena, which Derry learned especially for us today. Thank you so much, Derry. It's a unique song that not only warns the mighty that they might fall, but has some sympathy for the exiled Napoleon and his forsaken wife, Louisa.
Hi everyone, Derry O'Farrell here, and I'm delighted to be singing two songs today for you. I hope you enjoy them, but before I do, I'd like to just say a few words. Frank, for me, Frank Harte was a massive influence on my music and style of singing, I suppose, and repertoire. As you can probably tell, I recorded a lot of songs in the past few years that I heard Frank singing first, and one of the songs that I'm going to sing for you today is a song called The Valley of Knockanure, and it's a beautiful song. I recorded it on an album called True Born Irishman, and I believe that it was one of the very first songs that Frank ever collected. This is really important, I suppose, for me to be able to look back on that history. And the second song that I'm going to sing is a song called The Isle of St. Helena, again, which is a song I've heard sung on an album recorded by Frank. And I think it's really great that his music is still out there and it's very readily available for people to have a listen to. And if you haven't ever heard of Frank before or not heard him singing, I would advise that you definitely go and check him out. You may sing or speak about Easter week or the heroes of '98 and the Fenian men who roamed the glen in victory or defeat. Their names in history pages told, their memories well endured. That a song, the song of our darling sons in the valley of Knockanure. And there were Welsh and Lyons and the Dalton boys, and they were young and in their prime, as they rambled on down to a lonely spot where the black and tan did lie, and Republican bold they did uphold, oh, outlawed on London moor. And side by side they fought and they died in the valley of Knockanure, where it was all on a neighbouring hillside, where we listened in Camden days. In every house, in every town, there kneeled a maid to pray, and they're closing in all around there now with rifle fire so sure. Dalton is down and poor Lyons is dead in the valley of Knockanure. So they took him down beyond the fence where the flowers are in full bloom, and they made him kneel down upon the grass for to face his final doom. And then Dalton he spoke, and his voice it broke with passion proud and pure. Oh, for Ireland I'll die as I face the sky in the valley of Knockanure. And And the summer's sun was sinking down now between the hills and the sea, and the pale, pale moon, it was rising high far out from Trally town, and the dismal stars and the clouds afar, they are darkening o'er the moor, and the banshee cried when her sons they died in the valley of Knockandore. Oh, now Boney's away from his warring and his fighting. He's gone to a place where there's naught can delight him. He may sit there and dwell on the glory he's seen, oh, wife alone he will mourn on the Isle of St. Helena. No more in St. Cloud will he appear in great splendor, nor stand forth from the crowd like the great Alexander. He may look to the east while he thinks upon Lucana, but his heart is full of woe all on the Isle of St. Helena. Now the wine rushing waves round the shores they are washing, and the white billows heave on the rocks they are crashing. He may look towards the main from the great Mount Diana, but his eyes on the waves that surround St. Helena. Now Louisa, she weeps for her husband departed, and she dreams while she sleeps, and she wakes broken-hearted, not a friend to console her. In the past she had so many, now alone she does mourn when she thinks on St. Helena. Ah, you that have great wealth, beware of ambition, for it's some shift of fate could soon change your condition. Be steadfast in time, what's to come change you cannot. Maybe a race could end on the Isle of St. Helena. All you parliaments of England and you holy lions, on a prisoner of war, you can hurl your defiance, for all your base and tree, you never could demean him, and you exiled him to die to the Isle of St. Helena. is warring and is fighting. He's gone to a place where there's naught can delight him. He may sit there and dwell on the glory he is seen, oh, while forlorn he will mourn all on the Isle of Saint Helena.
Thanks to Derry O'Farrell for those gorgeous performances. I'm going to read another poem that I wrote about Frank Harte now. This was written just after Frank died in 2005. We were away at the time and I was very sorry to miss his wonderful funeral. So this was my way of giving him a personal send-off. It's now published in my new and selected poems, The Other Now, from Daedalus, and it's called In Memory of Frank Harte. You might hear echoes of some of the songs we've heard today in the poem. Oh where is the voice of Frank Harte? When he sang, there were two crowds, one that gathered to listen and one he conjured out of the air. He peopled the streets with Zosimus and Moses, summoned Billy in the Bowl, launched a flotilla of ships up the Liffey led by the Calabar. Dublin made him, and he, in turn, built his city out of old songs, resurrected heroes, restored lost bridges so the ghosts could cross back to us. As a child, he heard old soldiers from the Dublin Fusiliers who'd gone from Chapelizod out to Flanders, and they talked of killing snipers in a place that they called Wipers, and Frank sang of all the lives that battle squanders, with his whackfall the died all right tan tan tana. His voice was anguish echoing in an empty cell. His voice was a keening for dead trades and dreams. His voice was a passion kept in check or a rebel blast across shivering rooftops. His forest was willow and holly and laurel, trees where men were hanged, where birds told fates, where lovers were blessed or betrayed. Oh where is Frank Harte now? He is set forninst a hawthorn bough. He's unlocking Kilmainham, he's opening Mountjoy, he is sending home safely a rosy-cheeked boy. He is following someone he called Henry Joy, sing whackfall to died all right tan tan tana. He sang of lost worlds with lost words, tabinets and twangmen, waxies and swaddies. There was a love that laughed in his telling of a scrimmage in Kimmage, a rumblin' in crumblin', of owl ones and bowel ones and blackguards and all. He remembered the lot of the labouring man, the wasted navvies, the paddies hoking spuds, those who held hods, turned sods, were crushed under wheels of industry or state. He called up James, he called up Jim. When history lived, it lived through him, with failures, achievers, with lovers and leavers, to the whir of the loom of the liberty's weavers. Oh, what will he leave us, the sun and the moon and the air, when it carries an old Dublin tune? Sing whackfa de dire I'll die all the day long. Sing Frank Harte the weaver has spun his last song. One of the things that Frank Harte left us was a family tradition. His granddaughter Siobhan Hart is a brilliant interpreter of his songs. I first heard Siobhan sing when she was still in her buggy at the annual Frank Harte Singing and Walking Tour. That's over 10 years ago now. She's 14 years old and she really knows how to deliver a song. She's going to sing two for us. The first is a comic song about a policeman up in Dublin Castle in 1916 trying to learn Irish so he could infiltrate all of the rebels. The song is called The Limb of the Law, and it's also known by one of its chorus lines, Páme ag fálam an Gaeilge, I'm learning Irish. The poor policeman doesn't realise he doesn't know his erse from his elbow because his Irish words are all mixed up. Siobhan's going to follow that with the beloved Dublin song, The Char Ladies' Ball, written by Harry O'Donovan and made famous by the music hall star Jimmy O'Dea. Take it away, Siobhan.
You can tell by me feet and the limb of the law. The people of Dublin for me have no graw. They hiss me and boo me as I pass them by. Sinn Féin up the rebels, you'd hear them all cry. You might think that's bad, but there's one thing that's worse. That grand Irish language for me is a curse, and they're yabbering like an old ass's bray. The castle expects me to know what they say. With the comb of roan, you'd hear them all say, on digging to me, on Sinn Féin array. It's Doylem go willin', it's Doylem not gay. Tommy ag fowlem on Gael, I've a friend on the force and he's courting the cook. And what do you know, but she bought him a book with Irish on this side and English on that, so small I could carry it around in me hat. First learn the letters and then the whole phrase. I'll have it all off in a couple of days, and they're yabbering, I'll soon understand. Such learnification should stagger the land. With the comb of roan, you'd hear them all say, on day into May, on Sinn Féin array. It's Doylem go willin', it's Doylem not gay. Tommy ag fowlem on Gael, now this book I procured, and to learn I must try. On Will May means Aryan, Will too means am I. It's Doylem, I think that I do understand. My love is me foot and my close is me hand. Tommy ag fowlem, I'm learning, you see. If I keep on like this, an inspector I'll be. I'm getting too big that I don't know the cat. Me head is 2 sizes too large for me hat. With the comb of roan, you'd hear them all say, on digging to May, on Sinn Féin array. It's Doylem go willin', it's Doylem not gay. Tommy ag fowlem on Gael, now with learnification I'm bloody near dead. I lie on the floor 'cause I can't lie in bed. I'm walking and talking when I'm fast asleep. When I hear up the rebels, me flesh starts to creep. My friends have all left me, I've now but a few. I'm walking around like a wandering Jew. With the comb of roan, you'd hear them all say, on digging to May, on Sinn Féin array. It's Doylem go willin', it's Doylem not gay. Tommy ag fowlem on Gaelga. You may talk of your outings, your picnics and parties, your dinners and dances and hoolies and all, but wait till I tell you the gas that we had on the night that we went to the Char Ladies' Ball. I went there as Queen Anne, and I went with me man. He was dressed as a monkey locked up in a cage. And there's here-hots and pier-hots and hot-tots and whatnots and stars you could see on the music hall stage. At the Char Ladies' Ball, people said one and all, you're the belle of the ball, Mrs. Mulligan. We had 1 steps and 2 steps, and the devil knows what new steps. We swore that would never would be done again, be done. We had wine, porter and lemonade. We had cocktails and cocoa and all. We had champagne that night, but we'd real pains next morning, the night that we danced at the Char Ladies' Ball. There were cowboys and Indians that came from Duncontra Street, Francis Street, fairies, all diamonds and stars. There was one in the Roonies as the clock over Moonies. A telegram boy had a message from Mars. Mary Moore from the Lots was the queen of the Stotts, with a can out of Woolworths perched up on her dome. And young Jenny Whitehouse came dressed as a lighthouse in a Camden Street garbo that should have stayed home. At the Char Ladies' Ball, people said one and all, You're the belle of the ball, Mrs. Mulligan. We had 1 steps and 2 steps, and the devil knows what new steps we swore that would never would be done again, bedad. We had wine, porter and Jameson. We had cocktails and cocoa and all. We had rumbos and tangos, half cents and fandangos, the night that we danced at the Char Ladies' Ball. Mary Eleanor was the queen of the dawn. By 1:30 she looked like a real dirty knight. Mickey Farron, the bester, came dressed as a jester. He burst his balloon and dropped dead with the fright. Kevin Barr came as Bovrils up that sinking feeling, astride of the bottle, pyjamas and all. And he bumped into Faust, who was gloriously soused, and the two of them were sunk at the end of the hall. At the Char Ladies' Ball, people said one and all, you're the belle of the ball, Mrs. Mulligan. We had 1 steps and 2 steps, and the devil knows what new steps we swore that would never would be done again, bedad. We had wine, porter and Jameson. We had cocktails and cocoa and all. We'd a real stand-up fight, but we fell down to supper the night that we danced at the Char Ladies' Ball.
The belle of the ball there, with a brilliant future ahead of her, the incomparable Siobhan Hart. Next up, we have a poet best known for her haiku and haibun, but today giving us 2 longer poems about that staple of ballad singers' life, the session. May we soon be attending them again. Maeve O'Sullivan has published 4 collections of poetry with Albert Press. Her 5th is coming next year, and she's one of the few other poets I've ever seen at the An Góilín Club, so poets, step up to the plate and come and join us there.
Hi. So first of all, I'd like to say thanks very much to Catherine for inviting me to participate in this tribute event. I never met Frank Harte myself, but I'm aware of his very rich legacy. And I'm delighted to be listed among all these fantastic contributors, other singers and poets. So I'm going to read 2 poems. They're both taken from my 2014 collection of long-form poetry, which is Vocal Chords, and it was published by Alba Publishing. So the first one I'm going to read is the title poem of the book, and it was inspired by a trip to the Joe Mooney Summer School in Drumshanbo in County Leitrim, which I'm sure some of you will be familiar with. Vocal Chords. The Sligo train takes me to the singing place, the place where mines and quarries can be treacherous and the undertaker buys more than his fair share of drink, where the famine graveyard is a single field, the sun shining on its silent slope this afternoon as my friend refuses to play a flute lament. I am here to sing, and sing I do in a classroom of women who have journeyed to this town to do the same. We learn 20 songs together from Belique Rosie with the red jacket and the ready laugh. We sing about the good ship Kangaroo, the bonny bunch of roses, and the verdant praise of Screen. We sing next door to the harpers and fiddlers. We drink tea with the box players and the set dancers. We nod to the bodhrán and whistle players. We sing. Our instruments are invisible. We carry them everywhere. They are our own, and only they can marry the words to the tunes. In Monica's bar we swap songs like beads, applause stringing this one to the next. We sing of emigration, of love charmed or doomed, of death and Napoleon. We can't stop singing except to listen to another song. We don't want the singing to stop, but voices will not hold out forever without a break. The train home is silent. And the second poem I'd like to read for you is also about a session. We're travelling across the country and down to Kerry, so I was fortunate enough to be part of this regular session for many years, and so this is a poem that was inspired by that experience. The only thing I suppose that needs explanation, I use the Irish word cigara in the poem, so for anyone who's not familiar with Irish, the word means inspector. and it's usually in an educational context. Ear to the Sound for Niamh Brosnan. The regulars are in, the instruments unpacked, the TV's turned off, and the first tune is struck. It's Saturday night in Tanker's Bar. The old man we call the Kiggara begins his rounds, hovering over us, an angel in corduroy. Sometimes he takes a break and dances solo, his hands reaching out for his phantom partner's waist. It's Saturday night in Tanker's Bar. Polkas and waltzes are the most popular, but jigs and reels get toes tapping. A key change will always get a whoop, and singers are welcome here. It's Saturday night in Tanker's Bar. The percussion department is present and correct, 2 barons and curly on the wooden spoons. But the Kiggara prefers to float over the real musicians, savouring every breath and bow, each button and strum. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the event.
Thanks very much to Maeve O'Sullivan for those atmospheric poems. I think you'll agree they just make me long to be back in a snug at a session. Go merriwish bio a rish. Our final performer today is one of my own favourite singers, Niamh Parsons, a woman with an unforgettable voice. Her latest in a string of 8 solo albums, beautiful albums, is Kind Providence. Niamh is going to give us 2 songs which embody 2 staples of the Frank Harte tradition. Another song of the Napoleonic Wars, followed by a song about that staple of ballads, The Bold Highwayman, an Irish version of a Robin Hood character who robs the rich, for to rob the poor I shun it, as he says himself.
Hello, my name is Niamh Parsons. I'm going to sing 2 songs. One is The Banks of the Nile, which is a Napoleonic song, and Frank Harte had a great love of Napoleonic songs, as do I. And the second song is Valentine O'Hara, and I wasn't aware that he had actually sung it. I should have known. I didn't learn it from him, I learned it from Pádraig O'Looney. I was honoured to know Frank, to have sung with him and spent time with him chatting in both the Brazen Head and the An Góilín Singers Club, and feel very honoured. I also got him to launch one of my earlier albums, Blackbirds and Thrushes, and he is still very much missed. Heart the drums do beat, my love, I can no longer stay. The bugle horns are sounding clear, and we must march away. We are ordered down to Portsmouth, and it's many's the weary mile to join the British Army on the banks of the Nile. Oh, Johnny, lovely Johnny, don't leave me here to mourn. Don't make me curse and rue the day that ever I was born. Far parting with my love would be like parting with my life. So stay at home and do not roam, and I will be your wife. Oh, Nancy, my love, Nancy, sure that would never do. The captain, he has ordered, and we are bound to go. We must forsake our sweethearts, likewise our native soil. For we are bound on oath to serve on the banks of the Nile. Oh, but I'll cut off my yellow hair, and I'll go along with you. I'll dress myself in uniform, and I'll see Egypt too. I will march beneath your banner, while fortune it does smile, and we'll comfort one another on the banks of the Nile. But your waist it is too slender, and your fingers they are too small, and the burning suns of Egypt your rosy cheeks would spoil. For the cannons they do rattle, and the bullets they do fly, and the silver trumpets sound so loud to hide the dismal cries. Oh, curse upon those cruel wars, however they began, for they have robbed our country of many's the handsome man. They have robbed us of our sweethearts, now their bodies they feed the lion. On the burning sandy desert, on the banks of the Nile. I am a proud young highwayman named Valentine O'Hara. I come from poor but honest folk, nigh to the hill of Tara. For the getting of a maid with child to England I sail over. I left my parents and became a wild and daring rover. Straight to London I did go, where I became a soldier, resolved to fight Britannia's foe. No sergeant at arms was bolder. They sent me to a foreign shore, where the cannons loud do rattle. Believe me, boys, I do not boast how I behaved in battle. Many's the battle I fought in Holland and French Flanders. I always fought with courage keen, led on by brave commanders, till a cruel ensign called me out, and I was flogged and carted. Cruel the usage that I got, and so I soon deserted. Back to London I did go, as fast as ship could heave me, resolved that of my liberty no man could e'er deny me. I slept into the woods at night, by all my friends forsaken. I dare not walk the road by night, for fear I might be taken. But I, being of a courage bold, and likewise able-bodied, I robbed Lord Lowndes on the King's highway, with pistols heavy loaded. I strapped my charges to his breast, which made his heart a quiver. £500 in ready gold to me he did deliver. With part of my new golden store I bought a famous gelding that could jump over a 5-bar fence. I bought him from Ned Fielding. Lord Arkenstone into his coach I robbed at Covent Garden, and 2 hours later that same night I robbed the Earl of Warren. One night on Turnham Green I robbed a revenue collector, and what I got from him I gave to a widow to protect her. I always rob the rich and great, to rob the poor I shun it, and now they leave me to my fate, in iron chains adorned. Straight to Newgate I am bound, and by the law convicted, for to hang on Tyburn Tree is my fate, for which I'm much affrighted. Farewell, my friends and countrymen, and my native hill of Tara. Kind Providence will test the soul of Valentine O'Hara.
The wonderful Niamh Parsons there, ending this Poetry Ireland special event for the Frank Harte Festival, Living Ghosts, a tribute to Frank Harte in poetry and song. We hope you've all enjoyed the poetry, the stories and the singing. May all the songs find voices, may the poetry make its own music, and may the shadow of Frank Harte never grow less. Thanks to all the performers, to the Góilín Club and the ITMA. You'll find more poetry events at poetryireland.ie and the rest of the Frank Harte Festival at frankhartefestival.ie. But from Poetry Ireland for now, goodbye, stay safe, good Taisce Cheol.
Sad experience teaches me. At 20, 18, 16, 14, 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, 1. She had 19, 17, 15, 13, 11, 9, 7, 5, 3, and 1.